While 5th edition is an all-around great system, it is not without its issues. One disappointment is how the intelligence ability was made almost irrelevant for the vast majority of classes. All the other abilities in the game get used much more. Strength determines everyone's carrying capacity, the ability to wield melee and thrown weapons, and strength saving throws, such as against a Minotaur's charge or other attacks that knock you prone, or spells such as gusts of wind. Strength checks are used to break things, to grapple, shove, climb, jump, swim, and free yourself from entanglements and webs. Dexterity influences your armor class, the ability to wield finesse and ranged weapons. Dexterity saving throws, which is a very common type of save in the game, are used to avoid harmful effects like blasts of fire, lightning bolts, and certain traps. Dexterity checks cover things like initiative, stealth, thieves' tools, and acrobatics. Constitution is part of what determines how many hit points you have, which is a crucial thing. Constitution saving throws are very common, typically against things like poison, petrification, life drain, cold and necrotic damage, and in some cases, being stunned or paralyzed. Constitution also relates to stamina, to holding your breath, and to enduring extreme environments. Wisdom covers some key skills in the game, such as perception, insight, medicine, and survival. Wisdom saving throws represent willpower, and they have to do with resisting charms, dominations, commands, hypnosis, all these different kinds of mind control, as well as fear, and some forms of paralysis or slowed. It's the third most common type of saving throw, so you'll definitely see it come up sooner or later. Charisma covers all kinds of social interactions in the game, from performing, to persuading, to bluffing. It's used fairly frequently when dealing with NPCs. Charisma saving throws are not very common, though some well-known spells do call for them, such as Bane and Banishment. Then we have Intelligence. It is related to knowledge-based skills, which are Arcana, History, Nature, and Religion, as well as the Investigation skill. Intelligence saving throws are quite rare, probably the most rare in the game. They're found with some specific creatures like Mind Flayers and Intellect Devourers, in a few spells, typically illusions that you attempt to disbelieve through the power of rational logic. Unlike the other 5 abilities in the game, your character could go through an entire campaign without ever making a single intelligence check or saving throw. Now, there is a point to be made when it comes to role-playing. If you have a low intelligence character, you should probably not be the one who's always solving riddles or crafting really smart plans or doing scholarly type work. But some players do ignore this. They use their own metagame intelligence instead of the dim wits of their character with an intelligence of, say, 7 or 8. The fact is, there is no actual rule in D&D about this sort of thing. And I really should make the point that everyone should roleplay their characters according to all their ability scores, not just their intelligence. Low charisma characters should be gruff or socially awkward or just boring. Low wisdom characters should be poor decision makers. They lack self-discipline. They lack awareness of their environment and of spiritual depth. Low strength characters should struggle with physical tasks and anything that's athletic. Low dexterity characters should be clumsy and slow. And low constitution characters should be sickly or frail, or perhaps someone who was maimed or crippled by a previous injury. The point of all this is that unless you are a wizard or an artificer whose spellcasting is based on intelligence, there is very little incentive in 5th edition to not dump your intelligence score. I DM a lot of D&D, and there is no question that intelligence is by far the most common dump stat in the game. Sometimes parties do come into some trouble if they lack a high intelligence character, because having knowledge and lore-based skills can be great assets in certain situations, but in general, Most characters in 5e have an intelligence of 10 or 8, sometimes even lower. I'm not happy with this arrangement, and so I've created some optional rules that allow intelligence to play a bigger role in the campaigns. You can implement one or more of these rules to make intelligence more impactful. The first one is skill points. Your class and your background do not grant you proficiencies in skills and tools. Rather, they just provide the lists of potential proficiencies that you can choose from. Your intelligence score determines how many skill points you have. When you make your character, spend the skill points as follows. Proficiency with a skill costs 1 skill point. Proficiency with 2 tools also costs 1 skill point. Expertise with a skill or tool that you are already proficient in costs 2 skill points. And proficiency in a language costs 1 skill point. You get a number of skill points based upon your intelligence score. You can see in the table here how many skill points you get determined by your intelligence score. The less intelligent you are, the less skill points you have. The more intelligent you are, the more skill points you have. If you are an artificer, you can gain proficiency with 3 tools for a cost of 1 skill point. If you are a bard, you gain 2 additional skill points, and you can gain proficiency with 3 musical instruments for a cost of just 1 skill point. If you are a ranger, you gain 1 additional skill point, and if you are a rogue, you gain 3 additional skill points. The next optional rule is called strategizing. More intelligent characters can quickly assess situations and devise plans, whereas less intelligent characters either take longer to make their calculations or they just rely upon whatever trained responses or instincts they have. Default action. Rank the following 3 default actions for your character: dodge, attack the nearest enemy, and cast a cantrip. Ignore cast a cantrip if your character does not know any cantrips. When it comes to your character's turn in combat, you must immediately state what you are doing that turn, or take your first default action. If that action is impossible or inappropriate, take your next default action. The GM does not apply this rules when running monsters and NPCs due to the sheer complexity of the task of running the game. But that said, the GM should not spend much time strategizing when it comes to low intelligence creatures. Strategize. You have a number of pauses equal to 2 plus your intelligence modifier. When it comes to your turn during combat, you can spend a pause in order for you, the player, to gain 30 seconds of real-world time to decide what your character is going to do. This represents the character's ability to mentally organize tactics. After you finish a short or long rest, you regain all your pauses. The strategizing rule is a bit more involved to pull off, as everyone at the table will have to get used to either stating your character's action right away, or take your default action, or spend a pause to buy some time. The GM or the group will also need to use a phone timer or even a sand timer when someone spends a pause to strategize. But if your group can get into this flow, it will really ramp up the feeling of combat being fast-paced and characters having to make quick decisions. And it will also increase the sense of how an intelligent character really is better at planning, strategizing, and mental processing. The third optional rule is literacy and depth of thought. This basically gives a clear framework of what it means for characters to have whatever intelligence score they have. If your intelligence is 5 or less, you cannot read or write, you comprehend and express only simple thoughts, and are oblivious to anything complex. If your intelligence is 6 to 7, you read and write slowly and make many mistakes. Comprehending and expressing complex thoughts is almost impossible. Intelligence of 8 to 9, you read and write slower than average and you make some mistakes. Comprehending and expressing complex thoughts is very difficult. Intelligence of 10 to 11, you read and write at an average speed and make a normal amount of mistakes. Comprehending and expressing complex thoughts is challenging, though possible to an extent. Intelligence of 12 to 13. You read and write faster than average and make a small number of mistakes. Comprehending and expressing complex thoughts is possible, though you can easily get in over your head. Intelligence of 14 to 15. You read and write with impressive speed, and you make very few mistakes. Comprehending and expressing complex thoughts is stimulating and interesting to you. Intelligence of 16 to 17. You read and write with remarkable speed, and rarely make mistakes. You comprehend and express complex thoughts readily. In fact, you sometimes are the one who makes novel discoveries and revelations. Intelligence 18 through 19. You read and write with incredible speed and immediately catch your own mistakes. You comprehend and express complex thoughts with ease. Among scholars, thinkers, and philosophers, you are in the upper tiers. Intelligence of 20. You read and write with unbelievable speed and are practically flawless. You comprehend and express complex thoughts on a level that extremely few people ever achieve. With dedicated work, you could pioneer an entirely new school of thought or innovate a new system that revolutionizes society. The fourth optional rule is the simplest of them all, and it actually harkens back to older editions of the game, which had ability score requirements for certain classes or class features. It not only applies to intelligence, but all spellcasting abilities. Ability score requirements for spellcasting. In order to cast a spell, the caster must have a spellcasting ability score of at least 10 plus the spell's level. For example, in order to cast a 3rd level spell, a sorcerer must have a minimum charisma of 13, or a wizard must have an intelligence score of 13 or higher. This applies to learning spells and adding spells to a spellbook as well. This rule specifically applies to the spellcasting and pact magic features, as well as spells gained through feats. This rule does not apply to innate spellcasting, such as the innate spells of a dragon or a genie, spells that are gained via racial traits, such as a drow's fairy fire or a tiefling's hellish rebuke, and spells cast via magic items. As things are right now, you could build a wizard with an intelligence of just 13, yet somehow still cast all the way up to 9th level spells. Now, why would you do this? Your spell save DC and spell attack bonus would be really subpar. Well, there are a couple reasons you might. One is that many spells do not involve a saving throw or attack roll. Sleep, shield, haste, fly, invisibility, arcane eye, guidance, revivify, raise dead, prestidigitation, detect magic, pass without trace, dimension door, goodberry, conjure animals, and in fact, any summoning spell. Magic Missile is another great example. I've been playing an Evoker Wizard in a home campaign for a while now, and my character is built to take Magic Missile to maximum effectiveness. He deals incredible amounts of damage with it, and it has no saving throw or attack roll. Honestly, my character might overall be better if I would have increased my constitution and dexterity instead of intelligence, or taken feats instead of the ability score increases. Another case is with multi-class characters. If you are, say, a fighter wizard, you're probably better off just continuing to focus on strength and constitution, with your intelligence being 3rd or 4th place, just the bare minimum to be able to multi-class. This becomes even more apparent when we look at the Eldritch Knight and Arcane Trickster subclasses for fighter and rogue respectively, which are like 1/3 wizards. They don't even require a minimum intelligence score. You could have an intelligence of 6 and yet somehow still be learning wizardry and casting all these great spells that do not rely on enemy saves or on attack rolls. Really, if you think about it, it makes no sense, and it only further incentivizes the dumping of intelligence. The last suggestion is not a fleshed out rule, but rather an idea. Crafting. Whether the crafting system is really just one-time ability checks, or if it's some skill challenge that involves multiple checks, or even an entire subsystem that gets created, intelligence has traditionally been the ability score related to crafting items in D&D. Again, I don't have any rules developed for this. as it's way beyond the scope of this video and would be pretty involved, I think. But it's something that I did back in 4E, and I would consider doing so again. Now, it is easy to imagine how other abilities would factor into certain crafting skills, such as dexterity as part of the intricate work of jewelry making. But in the end, it takes intelligence more than anything else to understand and execute the complexities of crafting items. An extremely dexterous spider monkey cannot make a diamond necklace, and even a troll, for all its muscular power and extraordinary endurance, cannot forge a sword. But a human, even an out-of-shape human, can. If you'd like to grab these rules and use them in your own games, check out the link down in the video description. It will take you to my Patreon page where you can get the August 2023 issue of my monthly newsletter, Scrolls of the Bard. There's a free version that anyone can download, and there's also a patrons-only version that has a lot more content. For example, this month's newsletter included an update from me, 3 variants of Hedge Wizards, which are NPC stat blocks for lower-level wizards that are either self-taught or some kind of outcast. And there are these rules for making intelligence more impactful in 5th edition. However, all patrons of the Lorekeeper tier and above get access to the full newsletter, so this month also had the Astral Stingray monster, and there are actually 9 variants of Hedge Wizards, along with a page of sample encounters already built that you can just drop right into your games. There are a few different tiers of patron membership. Each one gets some great rewards, such as entries into monthly drawings that I do, and access to a private Discord channel. Aside from scoring these great benefits, you are supporting my channel and my work. I'm always seeking ways to provide content that makes your experience with tabletop RPGs more interesting, more creative, and more meaningful. Again, just follow the link down in the video description. You'll also find there a link where you can sign up for the free mailing list in my newsletter so that it just gets delivered right to your inbox every month. You even get a really cool welcome issue just for signing up. I want to say thank you to all of my patrons, and a special thanks in particular to Adam, Warser, Vince, and Nick. You guys rock. This is Esper, wishing you smarter games, or at least games in which smarts play their much-deserved role in the bigger picture. Thanks for watching, and as always, may your adventures be many.